So I said it before, and I'll say it again, and I'm coming on to actually say it again. And that is reckoning with the fact that before harm ever becomes systemic, it's communal. Okay. And you can say, well, it's a lack of resources. And I get that. Right. But what I'm here to do is introduce freedom from a new perspective. So I'm not here to challenge. I'm not here to play around. I'm not here to play, quote unquote, devil's advocate. And I'm not here to, politic. Okay. What I am saying is that we've never had the resources, but we've always maintained and we've always sustained. And so really what that looks like is, okay, for example, we don't have mental health resources. We never had mental health resources, but what we did have is a sense of community. We had a sense of understanding. There was this sense of civility and, a sense of like being persons of integrity to where you can come to your neighbor and things like that. And I think, I try not to really engage with these kind of like peaceful, we're all in this together type of, conversations, because I just think that this dialogue it's not going to be anything that's enacted, right? I think we're at a point where we do need to accept the fact that the vast majority of African Americans are incredibly individualized, and we honestly should be, right? Because I think for so many persons, many of us are unawake, okay? Many of us are just not awake, okay? And I don't speak that like matter-of-factly, and I don't speak that in a way to punish anybody, or, I don't speak that from self-hatred or for shame. I speak that to say, hey, listen, we are long gone from the days of community, right? Like we are long gone from the days of being on the same page. Like so many African Americans today are living completely different realities. And the realities, even if it is shared, even if it is systemic, many people want out of that reality. So whether that's a virtual reality of kind of like posturing, positioning as something that they're not, or, kind of like putting themselves in position to maintain a sense of luxury. I think for a lot of people, it's honestly just being on social media and kind of adopting certain type of rhetoric. And I don't necessarily think that that's a Black thing. I think you will kind of see that across all cultures, right? Like you're seeing, I think for the first time in large numbers, right? Like white Americans are integrating into Black spaces, and not even from a space of cultural appropriation, but from this space of like awareness, you know what I mean? Of like awareness. And like, I don't want to say acknowledgement to, kind of like be a little happy or glow and put something that's not there per se, especially not in large, but there is this sense of awareness now. And I think I know people like critique liberalism, and that's why I said I don't really like to get on here and like start politicking, because I think that that terminology, that classification is just way too narrow to really define like sociological shifts within our culture. But yeah, like I just think that we are actually living in a time where people do want to be more progressive. And I don't know if that's because we are now connected like via social media with persons who are in California and like, New York, and obviously their belief system is a little bit more secular. And so we don't really have this kind of like conservative, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it's like that from a political standpoint, but I think overall, with every person under this umbrella, like there's a lot of people who actually do want to be free and who do want to integrate with other cultures, and who do want to partake in the struggles. And like you've seen this kind of like with the Palestinian, the protest. And like, I just think that we are at a point where people do want to progress, but we obviously know Trump is trying to make America great again, right? Which is segregated, which is racist. And so it's always interesting to kind of see. I think in terms of like America, we absolutely could be one of the like leading nations, right? We obviously know that we do have a lot of resources, but we are also like trillions of dollars in debt. But at the same, maybe it's good debt, I don't know. But I think at the same time, like what makes that so impossible is that you have persons who live within our society who are extremely regressive, right? Whether that's racist, whether that's persons who are constantly, coming out on the front lines and advocating to African American communities about these very old rhetorics that don't really progress and don't really go anywhere. Like I said, I'm looking forward to listening to Code Switch with Gene Dumby. They just got a new podcast just kind of talking about whether or not protests work today. Like, is it active? Is it effective? We know at one point it was was effective. But we're also living in a day and age where things are shifting, right? Like things are shifting. The ways in which we go about being heard, like it's changing. And I can honestly say for myself, I think something I always want to try to make aware to just average Americans. Like I know today everybody is really shooting for American exceptionalism, but like for the average American, I want people to like really sit with some of the policies and the procedures, because what you'll see, and you have to also keep in mind, like even though it's a credible source, it's still like a magazine, you know what I mean? And it's still sensationalized. So like when you see the New York Times come on, they're like, the Senate just shut down public funding and like, you know what I mean? Like all these different things. Are you seeing it in real time though? You know what I mean? Like, is it impacting your day-to-day life? And I think for the vast majority of Americans, it's not. And I'm not going to sit here and say that again, matter of factly. And I'm not going to sit here and be naive to like these policies and these shifts and these changes within our culture that really do impact people, even if they don't have a social media platform, even if I've never visited their state or their city. Like, I'm not naive to that, you know what I mean? And I'm not ignorant to that. But at the same time, it's like, I feel like so often we want to advocate for our country. We want to advocate for equality, but we just don't really know how to do it because we've been doing it the same way for so long, like historically, that we don't even know how to show up. Like, I think it's like you have people who are either doing old things, like trying to implement old systems, old ways of advocacy and being and thinking and leading that, worked in the past. And that's like one end of the spectrum. And then I think the other end of the spectrum is you have people who are like, nah, listen, we can all just get along and like, we can all just ignore historical context and like sit in this boat and be like best friends and, race doesn't matter. And so it's like, no, you know what I mean? Like, I think you have people who are just on either extremes. And I think that right there is definitely due to an inability to have cognitive flexibility because we're not adversed on a variety of different subjects. We're not adversed. And it's not just a matter of history. It's not just a matter of like, patriarchy and feminism. Like, no, I think to really have a body of knowledge, I think you also have to take your book smarts and you have to take history and you have to take arts and you have to take society and you have to take science. Like, you have to take it all in, and like, it's not a separate category. Like, you have to be able to think in layers and you have to be able to look at it from the full scope of things. Like, you don't just take one thing and make it like you know what I mean? Like, it can't be like one thing cannot exist in totality. And we see that a lot, like with people who are like, for example, myself, if you look at it from a political standpoint, you'll say, well, you're just like, you know what I mean? You're just like a conservative. You know what I mean? But it's like, no, I'm not. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I possess a lot of different views and a lot of different understandings. So it's like, I don't know. I think until we welcome and embrace cognitive flexibility, like the ability to look at things from a different perspective and see things for the complexity that it is, I think we'll always really stay stuck in this place. Like, you know what I mean? I think we'll constantly be us versus them. We'll constantly be, my turf versus your turf. And I think we'll just kind of lean more and more into tribalism. And you kind of see that obviously on TikTok with a lot of young persons today. Like, they're getting all this terminology, like they're branding themselves as the feminist, but simultaneously wanting to be held and be partnered, not knowing the root and the origins of the feminism, which was the lesbianism. And like, like there's just like so much that goes into that. And it's like, I think you just have a bunch of lost persons. And it's not to say that I am found, you know what I mean? I am becoming, okay? Humbly, I am becoming. But I do think when you start talking about, persons who are going to be the leaders of the future, or at least should be, and you start kind of playing with their mind and making them brand themselves and, have personal brands or whatever the case may be, I think that just, that is totally regressive in terms of like education, and I think instead of reforming education, which we all could do, we could totally be a part of that, whether you're a substitute teacher or you are a teacher and you have a side business, right? Like, I don't know. Instead of actually enacting change on the ground roots level, what we all do is like we get emotional impulses, right? Trump does something happens with the Senate, like, you know what I mean? There's a new bill imposed and there's this sense of emotional reactivity. And like, for a moment, we feel like we're in community with one another. For a moment, we feel connected. And then when it's passed and we don't actually see this change, affect our day-to-day lives, then it's over and done with. You know what I mean? And instead of actually being like, you know what, we can actually make a difference as you and me, as teachers, as, you know what I mean, as educators, we don't do that work, right? One, I think because I think to do that work is actually to be without a spotlight. And I think today, like, having a platform is so enticing and so tempting that that's better than doing the silent work of actually like, paying the levy taxes in your community so like kids can get buses and go to school. You know what I mean? Like I feel like doing the real work is so unglamorous, and it's so like, but honestly, if you want to be a person who has peace and you are someone who, you believe in advocacy, you're an advocate. If you really want to have a sense of peace with your advocacy and not be so riled up and so emotional, it really just starts by doing. You know what I mean? Like doing, like we'll go to the protest, we'll get riled up, we'll have this sense of community, but then we'll like get back on our jobs and we're back on the same BS. You know what I mean? So it's like we're not really making any progress. Like we're just talking. We're just like, it comes together, it's emotional reactivity. We feel like it's like a church sermon. You know what I mean? Like until you really start doing the work, you know what I mean? Until you really start like moving your feet, using your hands to build something, like to do something, then it just becomes emotional reactivity. And I think we're so caught in that loop because the emotional reactivity is so high. Like, I'm sorry, the rewards of emotional reactivity are really great, right? Like for a moment, you actually feel like you're bonding with immigrants who actually probably are racist. You know what I mean? Like for a moment, we feel like we're progressing. Like you're bonding with the white moms who like, you know what I mean, are just totally disinterested in your plight. Like, you know what I mean? As a Black woman, like I feel like the cost is great for us. You know what I mean? We feel like we're progressing. And I think we deeply want this work of progression. But as Americans, we've really been hindered in our ability to implement that change. And I think we absolutely could do it. And I don't think it looks like building a Black bank. I'm not saying let's go radical and, build an island. Like, let's be realistic here. You know what I mean? I think that's another thing that critique I have about advocacy is like, it's not realistic today. Like we're not going back to Africa. Right? We know that we're not going back to Africa. Like even if say one person could go back to Africa or one person could leave the States, like it's a whole hundreds, thousands, you know what I mean? Thousands of persons who can't. So that's not an option, and additionally in that, like we're not African, we're African Americans. And so like you start talking about cultural differences and you start like, so I just think that the conversations around advocacy and like what it really looks like, it's very unrealistic. And I think even for the persons who come online with a level of social awareness in terms of like the differences within culture and the need for progress within American society, I think these people are incredibly dishonest. They'll come online and they'll advocate for something, but in their real lives, they ain't living that. Like I think about this one creator. Actually, no, I'm not going to go there. I just think that you have people who it's like, there's this sense of incongruency, like they'll come online and advocate for this thing like, oh, women should be this, women should be that, but like whole time they're living within the traditional familial system. Like they are the you know what I mean, like they are the provider in their family, that they actually were able to achieve this little bit of like American dream. They do have the economics to support their family, like their wife does respect them, like, you know what I mean, they don't have these problems, and yet they're advocating for these problems, or they're speaking as if they speak as if the solutions that we've implemented within our society actually work. You know what I mean? Like they speak as if like their wife is this boss babe and like they've been able to, support that and like still have this beautiful, respectful relation. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just think people speak today without acknowledging the trade-offs. And I think that gives people also a false sense of like progression, because it's like, oh, this person's a feminist, without actually saying they're a feminist. But at the same time, they don't actually live that. Like they know for a fact that wouldn't work for them. They know for a fact, hey, listen, the costs are high. Like I may not feel, like masculine in that situation. Like that's not something that's going to work for me, And I think this is just a prime example when you start talking about the solutions that we've provided within our society to be more progressive and how they failed tremendously, right? And this is why I challenge you guys to ask yourself, what happens when the system works for you? Like what happens when you do actually reach a point in your life as a woman and you are emotionally healthy and you're able to attract a good Black man? Like what happens as a male when you do achieve economic stability and you do meet a wife who's a little bit more domesticated and like who cooks you dinner and like loves you? Like, you know what I mean? Like what do we do then? Like what's the conversation? You know what I mean? Like, what happens when you do meet this feminist, this wild chick, so to speak? And I don't want to be like feminist wild chick, and I'm not here to like degrade feminism or like, I don't want to say it so loosely and so carelessly and like I'm critiquing it. But what I am saying is like, we act like we act like the things that we've implemented in this society are working. That's all I'm saying. You know what I mean? Like, we act like by advocating for immigrants and all these different things that made us closer. We act like by empowering women that empowered our relationships. Like, I just think that like we're just at a point. I just think we're in denial. I think we are in denial. And like I said, I'm not here to critique feminism. I'm not here to critique women empowerment. Like, obviously, listen, I don't have to spell it out. And I think that's something I also want to say. Like, I feel like if I have to spell it out, this is not the channel for you. I'm not the person for you. Like, I just feel like, yes, we can hold space for nuance, but I'm also not somebody who feels like I have to say everything that I'm not saying. Like, I think that's another reason too why we lack cognitive flexibility, because we don't have the ability to sit with what somebody is saying and like honor the nuance. Like, we need someone to tell us the nuance, and like that's not intelligence. You know what I mean? That's not really helping anybody. You know what I mean? Like, we should be able to be like, okay, what is this person not saying? And like put the pieces together. Like, we shouldn't always need someone to hold our hand and build the gap and put the puzzle together. Like, no, those are not the conversations that I'm interested in, and those are not the people that I speak to. So I think I'm going to end here. I've said a lot. This was fun. Y'all have a good day. Peace.